Okay, George, you have a lot of things going on here in the county, so tell us.
A lot of wastewater happening.
Yes.
Would you start with just identifying your name and position?
That would be nice.
Principal.
George Hoyfelder, Director of Barnstable County Department of Health and Environment.
Thank you.
Okay. So, do you want to make a presentation, or do you want to suggest?
I don't have a presentation. Of course, I can give you an overview of the process we went through to determine this budget.
Well, I wanted to thank you for preparing your mission, goal, task, and measure statement. I found that very, very helpful in terms of your what you want to accomplish over the course of this year. And I guess my question in reading over your budget and looking at some of your line items, some stay exactly the same, some are a little more, some are a little less. I mean, it's a little bit of everything. But I guess, are there any new initiatives that you have planned for this year, or any extension to initiatives that you already have that either require additional cost, or that maybe you can scale down the cost? Or do you find that?
Well, there are two initiatives pretty much this year that I want to pursue, none of which will cost, well, one of which might cost, but the other major one will not cost the county. As you know, I have our public health nurse, Rita Mitchell, is retiring after many faithful years of service. We're deeply indebted to the program she built up, and now are looking forward to ways to sustain them without having the continual input that the county has had as far as the resource input. We recently sort of formed and really bolstered up our Cape Cod Medical Reserve Corps. They've responded admirably in the last H1N1. In fact, they've saved the towns tens of thousands of dollars by having qualified people there to perform the vaccination clinics. In order to sustain that mission, we're going to sort of broaden that in the next year to assume some of the outreach that Rita was doing, particularly in the areas, because on Cape Cod, I always say, there are three real dangers, and it isn't, is there a cancer right out there? No, I say ticket Lyme, skin cancer, and smoking. It's a big one. The youth access smoking issue is still pretty prominent, and the state continues to cut back on the funding for that program. So this year, going to shape the mission of the Medical Reserve Corps in conjunction and sort of hopefully in cooperation with our local boards of health to start using some of the Medical Reserve Corps people who we have, highly qualified people, to start filling in the gaps of where the state has pulled away its funding, both on tobacco, Lyme, and in general, some of the health education initiatives that are out there that the state is no longer funding. So we see this as kind of a win-win, because Medical Reserve Corps needs to have sustainability, and in context of the Medical Reserve Corps, sustainability means engaging people so that they're available during the emergencies. Emergencies happen once, twice, 3 times a year, and in order to keep folks engaged, they want to be part of a more continuing mission, a lot of our volunteers. Gene Roma, a new person, has now got 400 plus volunteers, really unheard of. I think we never expected that sort of level of support from the communities as volunteer support coming out. So we want to capitalize on it and make up in those areas where the state is withdrawing funding, and indeed, we can't kick in. Our budgets are being pulled back a little bit. So that's an initiative that I don't believe will cost the county money. We're going to engage in the next year in an aggressive campaign for grants, capitalizing again on the Homeland Security grants, which are looking out for the welfare of, for instance, children in emergencies. It's been one area in our county that has been a little bit shy on our ability to address. And yet there's money out there, and we need to go after it and need to sort of build the programs in that will not only cover the emergencies, but some of the health issues with children, the obesity issue, the youth access to tobacco issue. So we're going to wind these around, and I don't believe it's going to cost the county money. because the Medical Reserve Corps, as you know, is supported by grants that we obtain under Homeland Security as it is, and we're going to look into moving that into a nonprofit organization under the department. That's the investigation next year. The initiative that I think the commissioners, with respect, should consider is that, probably 5 to 6 years ago now, you sort of encouraged the formation of regional emergency planning. Regional emergency planning is now a model for the state. They use us as a model for the state. Sean O'Brien runs that program. And there are certain aspects of that which we've been running on a shoestring that if there was any money available, I would ask for some indulgence in that area. And that would be in those times during emergencies when shelters have to open. There are, for instance, in the last storm, when a shelter opens, the Red Cross normally supports it with the majority of funding. As soon as somebody walks in there, Red Cross takes the funding. The REPC supports the opening of it and hopefully functions in a way to support it through its life as it stays open. The part that doesn't get funded is those personnel that are part of the REPC, the incident management team, and that sort of hidden infrastructure that directs resources. They're there on 24-hour shifts, 8-hour shifts, but for 24 hours during events. We don't have money to support them, even to get food to them or to get some minor things to them. And I've asked Sean O'Brien to sort of give me a rough budget of what that would take, and he said about $15,000.
So you're saying to have sort of this money aside,
Yes.
so in the event of an emergency, you
Correct.
have funds to go to. Okay.
Correct. And obviously, anything that isn't used gets turned back at the end.
Is this
I look
in here,
at it as a
George? Is that in
contingent.
here?
No, it is not.
Okay.
It is not in there.
How is it that you put in less money on the tobacco for the salaries of the tobacco?
Well, because our program is totally supported by the state. and
Oh,
full
I
of
see.
funding.
Okay, that's the reason.
Full of funding. So now we're pretty much sort of bare bones youth access, sting operations, inspections of sites for youth access issues. And I think as we move into trying to obtain some grants, particularly the children-oriented grants from Homeland Security, we might leave some of that youth access issue in there, the tobacco issue. Because it is. It's an insidious thing that our state government has taken some of those funds and not let them flow through for the tobacco tax. But they haven't. We just need to respond to it in the way that we can.
Questions? I was looking, and it said in maintain a web-based performance monitoring reporting system on the compliance of alternative septics. What does that mean? Can people log in? I mean, what is a
Yes.
web-based? People can log in.
Web-based means that we used to, let me go a little bit of history. We used to take our department personnel, go to every board of health, dig through their files, get all the records, compile them for them, and reproduce them for them. About 4 years ago, we investigated and instituted a web-based system through a grant, 319 and 604B grant. Now we have in the county, if you own, operate, monitor, anything to do with an alternative septic system, you log on to a web-based system and you report it. If you don't report it, we have little flags in there that say, Mary Smith owns a system on this location and she did not report her quarterly results as required by their particular board of health. We send the operator a message. We do 2 or 3 low-key sort of, are you going to do this? Then we have arrangements with every Board of Health, with the exception of Sandwich, every Board of Health, what our next enforcement action would be. In some instances, we take it all away. We actually schedule a Board of Health meeting. We present the material so that they can go forward with enforcement action. Some Boards of Health have said, we've done enough to these folks, just, let it be. We go by what the local Board of Health wants for follow-through enforcement.
How many systems are you?
About 1,500 right now, 1,400.
1,500 alternative systems
Yes.
on the Cape?
Yes.
When you say maintain, this is kind of relating to the different discussion, but is it on our server we're maintaining it, or is this a service that,
It's a service that it is a contractor who has a service, the software for it. We maintain the records here in case they ever dropped off the face of the earth. And we do have contingency plans should that ever happen, but it didn't look like it. It doesn't look like it's going to.
so it's outsourced?
Yes, Carmody Database Systems is the one that we use their software. CARMODY.
I asked because two questions. One is the IT discussion, but also the Cape Light Compact, part of its 3-year plan, and all of the utilities are moving towards having customer access. So this, our database web access will be outsourced as well, so that customers will be able to access their account and say, did I have an energy audit, and if so, what did I do?
Our
So I'm just
customer
curious.
is the maintainers of the system, and they can access their records for
Right.
their customers only. We went through a long process here where people would say, hey, I don't want anybody to know all my customers. So we designed a system for limited access by the customer for privacy
So
purposes.
the customer are the 1,500 people who have
No, the
systems?
customers are, they're probably 40 plus at the most.
The
contract.
installers, not designers
Correct.
of the system.
Correct.
Installers or maintainers?
Maintainers of the system.
Right.
Now, if a homeowner calls us, which they do on many occasions, they say, gee, I don't know whether this person's been to us at all. We can, within about 5 minutes, email them or fax them or anything else them, all of their records for that. But we did not want the homeowner to have access to it because that would have been a cost added to the program that we didn't think was worth the bang for the buck.
Do you do the same for decentralized systems?
Well, decentralized is a broad term. We do everything up to 10,000 gallons a day.
Oh, up to
10,000 gallons a day is, as you may know, the groundwater discharge permit. Everything below that is reported to us. Everything above that is actually under state enforcement program outside of Title V, and the Board of Health has no authority.
Oh, okay.
That's under DEP.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they may, in the future, turn that over to the locals as they go through the cost-cutting measure, because I know the state is hurting in these particular areas, particularly IA systems. They don't know what to do with them. We have probably the majority of it in any region in the state, and we track them more than the state tracks their own.
How much is that growing every year, George?
We can pick up about 150 systems a year. It's slowed down because as people look at comprehensive wastewater management planning, they're seeing, well, are these things ever going to fit into our overall plan? We had hoped, to tell you the truth, that it wouldn't grow that much until comprehensive wastewater planning did take place. But through the 90s, they just cranked these things in because people want that extra bedroom, or they want this extra appearance.
Well, there are two things, and I think that's on the on-site septic improvement program, which I think you're talking about. You mentioned 150 per year being added on that.
No, that was for the IA system.
For the IA
For the
system.
loan system, for instance, in the last calendar year, we have done $4.3 million in loans, $4.29 million.
It's about twice as much as we
Yeah,
thought.
twice as much as
Okay,
we thought we would.
that's the monetary amount. But what are the units? How many sites does that represent?
I would have to check how many loans that represents.
Okay, because as we measure the effectiveness of the program, one of the things that's useful is to find out what the average cost is by looking at,
I
the
just
numbers.
recently had that all compiled because we're interested in that also. By town, all of the costs per installation, now that includes engineering, that includes any cosmetic work that's done in association with it, obviously the construction of the system, and anything that has to be done after that, permits. There's now in every town, as you may know, a trench permit that has to be done, and sometimes that's up to $200. So we will have those data, and I have them on a little histogram because I'm interested in what the overall cost is. Our average costs are running somewhere shy of $9,000 a system, but it's not a bell-shaped curve either.
That's to install.
Yes, that's everything. Soup
Is
to
there a
nuts.
way to track, do you think, any of the maintenance costs associated with these systems?
Now, we're talking two separate types of
Right,
systems
I-
here.
oh,
Bill is
we are
talking
on-site.
Yeah, we are.
about the
Sorry.
on-site.
Just let me.
But we already know what the average cost to maintain a system is on Cape Cod. We've done a 20-year analysis, presented it to the towns. The present worth analysis that's presented to the towns, somewhere in the vicinity of $30,000 as a 20-year sort of cost of an IA system presently today. And that will get roughly 60% removal of your nitrogen. Now, we haven't got any on the real advanced units because there are not so many real advanced units in our area. There's only about 4 of the Nitrix variety and others that are controversial and are in the news a lot. But we've done a lot of research on them. But that comes on a whole different component of the department, which is the test center, which we do research.
Okay, this is very useful information, and there's another piece to this that's of great concern to the people that are here, that are looking at the suggestions we're making for let's say for improvement of water quality, is how can we factor in some mitigation for people that are doing the right thing, and yet are, let's say, within a year or two, are seeing the introduction of betterment and improvements. So I think that's something that I'd like you to give some thought to, because that seems to be the sticking point for a lot of progress in the individual communities, as to where is the point, what is the arbitrary point of before and after, so that people can make some plans with regard to this.
It was not sort of formed enough to actually put as a goal within this budget. However, we have worked with towns, worked with Provincetown, are working with Barnstable to, in those areas where they're going to institute sewer within 5 years, to develop a plan so that their folks will not be putting in Title V systems. That we would, we've done a number of models, and we're still working through it with DEP, where we would approve a temporary design, train the Board of Health to do that same process, one or the other, because we were one of the first ones in the state to do it in Provincetown. Sub-Title V went in prior to sewer, and it saved people a lot of money and raised a lot of hands at town meeting, because now they said, hey, I didn't spend my money yet, so I'll raise my hand. We're doing that in areas, and have done that in areas for Barnstable, investigating it further. As the plans flesh out, and as towns say within 3 years it will be right here, we will work with those boards out to decide how they're going to do it. They may be able to do it locally with resources. All our agents are Title V conversant. It's a matter of time, and to do that. We're very familiar with it. We've done a lot of research on the systems, both IA and regular, so we feel confident that we could design systems that could last that 5 years, that would cost a whole lot less than what you normally design a system for, which is a 20-year lifespan plus. So we are working with that, Bill, and Barnstable was the first town, other than Provincetown, that we worked with in the Stewart's Creek area.
And just as a follow-up, the town of Barnstable did a survey of its citizens, in which they got results that said that better than like 71+% were in favor of wastewater, let's say some type of centralized, or let's say a wastewater service, but that was encouraged. But of course, they were not in favor of something that added a 2.5% override. And then finally, on the IA systems, the alternate systems. Is it a fair statement to say that there is no persistent evidence that the extrapolation of application, in other words, taking a system that works for maybe one or two individual sites, can actually be expanded to serve what I would call a community? From what I've
Is it a fair
seen,
statement that cannot occur?
I didn't say it could not occur, but so far, is there any evidence that supports that would lead you to believe, as an engineer, that going in the direction is a supportable direction for people to take as an alternative to the kinds of things that we've been promoting as far as what's called traditional nitrate removal systems?
Let me make a statement which I think addresses that. You can correct me if I haven't answered your question. It is true that any technology out there that we've investigated and is presently in the field can be expanded to meet that same need anywhere. In other words, a system that meets 40%, 50% removal in the on-site can be expected if you expanded that to 200 to 300 houses, even putting it in a collective system or individual systems, will meet that same goal. That is a fact. The sort of more pertinent fact is that the removals achievable by the technologies we've looked so far, with the exception of one, generally are not meeting the TMDL requirements of the town, and therefore you cannot say, which is I believe the nut of your question, you can't say these small things are going to meet the larger goals that are required. They can't do it simply because even if you multiply 40 by 10, it never gets to be better removal than 400.
Okay, and you're communicating all of this information to the wastewater collaborative?
All the time we communicate it to the towns and to the collaborative. We've made many presentations and at anybody's request, because the story with IAs is two sentences. They need 50% removal 70% of the time. It's a very easy thing. And then after that, it's only window dressing. Hello, I'm George Pfeiffer, Knoxville County Department of Health Department. Those are the two sentences.
That's
all you
exactly
have to
right.
say.
They don't like to hear that, Papa.
And of course, this brings up something that I read in under your goals. Respond to asks and resolve all inquiries to municipal and private facilities regarding indoor air quality. And I hope you won't refer to us.
Might be a little typo there.
That was a typo. yeah.
Hopefully not a Freudian slip.
No, well, depends.
Yeah, it could be.
Depends on the situation.
I don't take it too personally.
Yeah, good.
I think he means assess.
Assess.
Of course he does. Of course he does. But in these serious
That
weighty
wouldn't get
matters,
picked up on the
No,
picked up on the word change either.
no, it wouldn't. But by the way, the one thing that impresses me about this, if I may, on your presentation, you're presenting 21 regional programs. 21, count them, the regional programs that that the county is doing, and I think that that's something that deserves some attention from people who say that. Are we actually engaged or involved in providing regional services to the community? The first budget we're looking at is 21 of them, count them. So, and the public education piece, I think, is essential to keep moving all of this forward. And I know that you're certainly an important piece of that. And you mentioned was it a program, an additional program? Are you going to make a formal request for that addition?
Well, I had assumed, and possibly incorrectly, that funds were rather limited, and this particular need came up only recently after the budget was prepared because we had that storm. We had a couple shelters open, and we had always been running the REPC out of our budget, sort of whatever we can do, we shuttle aside if they need this or that, but I see that one or two events like major storms would quickly be put beyond what our budget could handle. So that's why, if asked, somebody said, hey, what would you add? I'd add. What would I subtract?
that's the
Yeah, that's
15,000
fine.
you're
That's-
talking about. Yeah, the REPC.
Stop there.
Yeah.
I actually have one that I want to throw on the table. It's a big one, and George did not include it as well. We, as you know, have been working for the past, it seems like 10 years, but I think it's about 2 years, on the design and engineering of the new health water quality testing lab up in the gym. And we've got, I think, pretty finalized design plans, and we've got pretty finalized cost estimations. And as you know, we put $1 million of our cash building reserve aside for that project. We picked the $1 million because that was the limit of the DCAM's waiver allowance. But I think we can't get the cost estimates down below, I believe we're at 1.8, George, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm going to recommend that we, on the capital budget side, add $800,000 into this budget. That would assume $800,000 in bond issues to get that project done. I think it's an integral part of kind of the long-term health and viability of the health lab. It's also kind of a key component piece of some of the space needs here at the county. So I think we're going to have to bite the bullet both on the cost side and on the dealing with DCAM side
That's a
and
149 then?
it would be, and I have to get DCAM involved to review the design and the engineering and the cost estimation piece of it. So,
Bill?
As we talk about DCAM, it brings that specter that DCAM adds factors to the cost of providing, or adds infrastructure issues that we would not have to face if we kept the price below the exposure to them. I know that in case of housing, it adds about a 50% cost in some cases to provide housing that meets, let's say, the requirements that the state imposes, where we could provide perfectly adequate facilities, without that. So the question comes, how much more do we have to add as a factor to our bonding capacity, or let's say for our to the request for bonding to cover the additional cost of meeting DCAM requirements? I think we have to know that, and I don't know whether or not the 800,000 covers it.
well, let me flip that question. It's a legitimate question, Bill. Let me answer it by flipping it a little bit. I think we have decent numbers. We have good engineering. We know what we want to do out there. We get a quality health lab on the first floor. We get a loft on the second floor for some office space and things. I think the answer I would say is we know and have some high level of confidence in the number. It's a good time to do kind of the construction piece right now. Costs are down.
Absolutely.
We should go to DCAM with our information and see how it all plays out, is I guess what I would say. The kind of the fear, and I have the same fear, that's why we asked for the waiver, that DCAM can muddy the waters, doesn't, in my mind, offset what the reality may be. And if it comes back and they say, no, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this, and all of a sudden we have a $10 million project, then you know what?
We
We're
don't
not
do
going to be able to do it. We can't afford that. But if we go to them, we work with them, we do everything we need to do and jump all through the hoops and get our project at $1.8 million, then I think we'll be satisfied. We can't not try because we're afraid of what DCAM may or may not do.
Sure. So say if all goes accordingly, when would we start this, and when would you see completion?
DCAM is the wild card in here. We are ready to bid the project out right now. We could go to the construction bid right now. We have all plans, we have all the specs, we have all of that stuff.
Okay.
So now it's just a question of once, assuming this gets approved in the budget in July or in June, we could start the DCAM. Well, we could probably start the DCAM process now
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
because we don't have to wait. So.
Remind me, does DCAM tripped because you have to spend or borrow more than $1 million, or is DCAM tripped because of the total
Total
cost?
project cost. Total project cost.
Yeah, total project.
We couldn't have broken that down.
Oh, believe me.
We tried.
You never
We've tried to do that to the extent we can. And we just got the
We're
point
not doing
where...
anything that everybody else isn't doing.
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay, and we wouldn't be
We
doing
have a
our job.
letter
We
that
wouldn't
says
be doing our
they,
job
by
if we
law,
didn't.
their exemption is limited to $1 million. Now, could we talk to our delegation and see if there's anything we could do? Sure, we could do that. But right now, we're at a point where we
you
need
gotta get
to
We can't
go...
apply for
yeah,
anything
we
less
can't
than
go.
$1.8 million, so they would
We're
have
stuck.
they'd have to give us a $2 million exemption.
Raised some of their limits, like they did on purchasing, but they didn't.
It did for,
DCAM didn't
for,
raise their
for
limits.
30B, they did.
For 30B, but
not
nothing-
on the
not on
DCAM,
not
please, not
DCAM.
as far as I'm aware. No.
Okay.
But on the less than $1 million, that's always been an attempt to reduce, to hold the line on cost. That's always been a motivation.
Oh, we've done that. George has been... I have to give credit to John Blaisdell. He's been very good at...
He's been
Have
phenomenal.
you sent those plans to the Cape Light Compact to make sure they're efficient, or did
I
you?
think he's worked with...
He's worked with John, I believe,
For
yeah.
not only the heating, air conditioning, the
John
lighting,
Burns, yeah.
everything.
Yeah, that wouldn't look good.
Okay, well, we need
We'll get 5 minutes.
just a
Okay,
few
we
minutes
have
to
5
change the
minutes.
ticket.
Okay, there's a bottom,
we can-
goodness,
Okay,
there's
I'll
a bottom line
check it out.
figure over here.
Is there any...
2.2 million, and adding 800,000, would that be separate from, would that be a separate for capital budget
It
item?
would be in this budget, obviously, so you would have a, almost $3 million budget. But in terms of the revenue in support of that 800,000 would be from a bond issue. And I should say, I guess I should. Are you back?
No.
I didn't go
Yes,
out.
yes,
We've got 5. You got 5 minutes
Okay,
to kind of
fine.
wrap it up.
As you know, over the past number of years when the county's fiscal health was cash rich, we had done all of our capital work basically with cash. So it's been a number of years since we've issued bonds. Basically, it's been since '97 we closed the hospital. Right now, we have pretty much zero debt service. We will, over the past couple of years when cash has been tight, we have been doing capital projects. We have been spending out of the capital fund. Those need to be replenished, so we're going to have to do a bond issue. But I believe it's probably, our capital fund's probably at $1.7 million right now. We have to issue those in bonds. And over 20 years, our debt service is going to be very minimal at this point.
Whenever we talk about bonds, and it is necessary to have the bond, what is the revenue stream that's going to support this bond outside of what the revenue stream is?
We have a debt service payment, and we have built in, even last year, we built in a placeholder for debt service.
Okay.
We put in $175,000. Because you're right, if you drive your debt service down to zero and basically spend that money everywhere else, then when you go to reissue your bonds, you're scrambling to find out where to pay the debt service. So we did put a placeholder in.
What are the usual number of years that the bonds are out?
Well, it depends on what
The
you're
project?
issuing the bonds for. A lot of the capital projects we've been doing is roofs and, those types of things. Roofs we don't do for 20. I think we'll probably issue as a 10-year bond. However, the $800,000 for the building, we would probably do 20, but you could consider doing a 30-year bond. I'm always skeptical about 30-year bonds, but certainly a 20-year bond would be reasonable.
And do you usually submit those to bond counsel for review?
We go through bond counsel, and we have to do a prospectus, and
Right.
you have to go
All
through the
that.
whole process. Yeah.
Okay. And then from a state perspective, I know on the municipal side, debt service is handled one way, and it's probably very different on the county. I mean, because there's no Prop 2.5 that governs our
That's right. We
revenue.
don't have a debt
So we don't have any of
We don't
that
have a debt
excluded or
capacity.
unexcluded
Good,
debt
exactly. We
issues
don't
at all.
have to
It's
do
just
that.
simply, if the revenue is there
That's correct.
and the costs are allocated, then
That's
the
right.
bonding can
That's correct.
proceed.
Yeah.
Okay.
We don't have that magic of reaching into the people's pocket.
Right, exactly. For tax purposes.
Down to 1 minute.
Okay. Anything else you want to add, George, at this point?
No?
I actually do have some more
Yes.
questions, but I'll wait. I just on the.
We have 1 minute. So.
I know MRC. I know that's covered under
Where's
this
that?
budget says CDC. It's at the very end of the numbers.
Right.
I believe that's the
Medical reserve
budget that covers it.
Yeah.
It's about $60,000. We see that continuing next year, and it's
We
not.
believe it will continue. The health agents grant is that we administer to the towns is from the Center for Disease Control overall grant, and the health agents are highly supportive of getting the MRC going. And after this year, I cannot even imagine them thinking that, hey, it didn't work, let's pull the plug.
MRC.
The Medical Reserve Corps.
Oh, the medical reserve.
CDC
Okay.
equals
So
MRC.
the Medical Reserve Corps grant, which we get from two sources, one from the Center for Disease Control and another one which is a separate MRC grant. We cobbled together the money for this. I don't believe will go away for the next 2 years. And within the next 2 years, I believe we'll start looking at supporting it through grants from other locations also, and just start piecing it together. The present person we have in there, Gene Roman, has quite a vision for it. The expansion of the vision involving towns, boards of health, and the expertise on those boards of health. In fact, Gail Harkness in Falmouth is going to assist her in writing a major CDC grant for children in emergencies. And so we'll just keep looking for those funds. And I think that's not a new direction for us, because that's pretty much the MO of the department. But we're hopeful that we're going to be able to garner the money, because we have some real good projects and good ideas.
George, I guess this is a question. It's okay off camera.
It's on camera now.
It goes back to this whole distribution of the H1N1 vaccine, and it seemed maybe punished is not the right word, but we had coordinated so that we had one centralized location, and it seemed that we got less vaccine because of that, even though other areas of the state were less efficient, less coordinated, but they had more distribution centers, so they got more vaccine. How do we communicate to the state that they should design their distribution, whatever programs, not to punish places which are coordinated on a regional basis, but to reward those? That seems to be the issue that we're facing all the time.
Taking two steps. One is that the Commissioner of Public Health has asked for input. Boy, I believe he is going to get some serious input on that particular issue. And we're going to, as a strategy, not suppose that the state is going to change their strategy, but rather just adapt it so that our presentation to them as far as needs will match what it is to get the maximum number of vaccines. We had anticipated that we would get 100,000 vaccines down here. If they dropped them in the middle of the airport, it would have been great. We were ready. We had 50 nurses ready to go. We had at least as many MRC volunteers ready to go, and we could organize our clinics. But we didn't get that. And we know why we didn't get it, because we played by the rules. And now we understand that we should have had, for every town, we should have, on their behalf, requested 10,000 vaccines. We should have done that. But we were told that the better way to do it would be this. Next year we're going to cover every base. We'll just cover every base. And we will present our organizational structure to the powers to be at whatever form they wish to see it in order to obtain those maximum number of vaccines. That's all we can do, because it was indeed chaos. And we were somewhat a subject of our own success. We were ready to go and incurred more costs, not to the county, but through CDC, by having so many people ready to distribute the vaccines that weren't out there.
Bill?
Speaking as a veteran who uses the Hyannis Walk-In Center, a month and a half ago when I went in there to get my flu shot, which I usually get, they told me, well, it turns out that they're not going to get any more flu shots and you're on your own. So I have this vision that there's over 40, maybe 45,000 veterans on Cape Cod. And basically I'll go to fry ice because the federal government didn't supply, the Veterans Administration with sufficient quantity of, we're told, go find somebody.
Right.
I know that some of the local companies like OSCO and CVS, among others, are providing shots for both H1N1 as well as flu shots. But it is an additional expense. I believe that I signed up for a H1N1 shot on Friday, and it's going to cost between $18 and $20, for it. So that's something that I think that
The administration fee.
Right.
They can't charge it all for the vaccine, but they can.
Now, George, has the priority shifted now? Originally, the H1N1 was only for children, up to a certain
It's open
age.
to the entire
It's
population
open.
now.
And
We
is it
just
recommended
organized-
now for the entire population?
Correct. We just organized one of the regional clinics down from Eastham down, Brewster included. In fact, one's running as we speak right now. It's open to the general population. At the end of this whole H1N1, and it would be fair to characterize as a debacle, we're going to sit down and figure out what should we do given the present way that we receive vaccines, even the communication pattern between us and the state. What should we do to position ourselves the best? And we've always known it was just to be very flexible and to be able to sort of react in a moment's notice to say, okay, if we need these 20 applications in at this point, I get the 20 applications in at this point. We're just still scratching our heads on how that all happened and unfolded. But fortunately, we had enough resources, and CDC did give some rather large grants that we administer to the towns. They had the financial resources to run these clinics. We were afraid that VNA nurses at $80 an hour would chew up a whole bunch of money very quickly. And we are, and I would be proud to say on camera that the VNA has done so commendably at working with our volunteers and our nurses, our per diem nurses, to meld together a program that was affordable and within that grant. It all worked. The system worked, no matter how bad we had for distribution to us. Once it got here, the system worked.
And you stand by it.
Yes, absolutely.
Just one follow-up. This is really not exactly part of your budget, but the incidence of H1N1 on the Cape. Do you have any idea what that is?
Well, I don't think we'll ever get a true idea because once the initial tests were done on anyone who exhibited flu symptoms, they stopped doing it and said, assume it's H1N1 because that was the prevalent flu. That's what they had assumed. We were getting updates fairly consistently through the Health Alert Network to sort of anticipate where we might have to direct some educational and some vaccines, to ship vaccines. We're thinking, some towns were willing to do that. They said, we don't have enough to run a clinic, so we'll give ours up for somebody who might need them. And we're working in a coordinating role for that during this time of sort of a vaccine shortage. But I don't think we'll ever know how many, and it's not over. It's certainly not over because right now we're running the clinics like crazy. We're in one series of days, 31 days last month, we ran 35 clinics. And really, I think statewide, with the exception of probably a large infrastructure in Boston or Cambridge, I think we did commendably. The nurses, the DNA, the MRC, certainly the Medical Reserve Corps pulled through like unbelievable.
Dukes and Nantucket County are listed as part of the, I think, part of the coordination responsibility.
Yes.
Is that supported by the CDC?
Absolutely. In fact, what we did when we got our grant money, which is now up close to $500,000, what we did is got together with all the health agents and said, how is the most equitable way to distribute this initially? We did a first cut and said, the first public health emergency money came directly to schools. So what we did, some of our staff sat down with the school populations off the web, confirmed them with the towns, and did an apportionment based on that, sent them back a report saying, we have $18,000 worth of money available for your clinic, because their town managers needed that before they could start to deploy and hire nurses. So we did that first. The second round of funding, called FER 3, Public Health Emergency 3, that was to the general population. So again, we got a vote and consensus from the 23 towns in the coalition and the 2 tribes. We got consistency in saying, okay, we want to do this based on population of the towns. Got out the population estimates. That was our first cut. We all recognize that the whole goal is to get our population vaccinated. So some of the towns on the Lower Cape, Wellesley, Truro, Provincetown, who did not by population get that apportionment, we realized we would have to shift some down that way. And the health agents and the coalition have said yes, whatever is needed to do that. And so far, I just checked yesterday because we sent the budget sheets out to the towns what they had left. No one has gone over their money, although there are a few towns right there on the edge.
You also,
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
You're also working with the cooperative extension on the Lyme disease and rabies, and that to me is a program that seems to always be in a crisis mode.
Yes, it is.
And I'm wondering if there's anything that we could do to put it more at the front, on a front burner rather than on let's say in a more responsive, continuing way, because the controversy that seems to exist in the acceptance by physicians with regard to
Lyme.
This is a real the Lyme disease is a real tough thing. The baiting program, I know that Sean does a lot of work to try to keep that in play, and I'm wondering looking forward to the spring when people start to get out more, as to what we're prepared to do in this springtime so that we protect people on the with regard to the rabies issue.
We have 1 and usually 2 staff that assist with the USDA baiting program, and one of our staff is on the Cape Cod Rabies Task Force. So I don't think there's a whole lot more effort there that can be done, because no one knows whether that baiting program can really push rabies off the Cape. Tick and Lyme, and in fact all tick-borne diseases. Again, I think what I'm going to do is, Rita retires, she was doing a whole lot of outreach there. And it's a very important issue, and we want to see whether we can dovetail some of the Medical Reserve Corps assets into address that problem. Because what is the real problem with tick and Lyme? The real problem with tick and Lyme is most people don't know it. And they get the tick bite and whatever, and it's too late. They don't know where to send the tick. Should I send the tick? What do I tell my doctor? All of those questions. It's an education outreach. Well, if you've got one or two people, Dave Sensor certainly, and Rita, out there that can do 4,000, which they did, 4,000 children last year, well, what if we train a number of folks who are well qualified, medically oriented, to go as a sort of, I want to say, a speakers forum, that we can send them out to the major exposure groups, where kids are signing up for baseball, where they're going to camp. All of the landscape companies are out there that some of them don't speak. There's non-English speaking population out there. So we get some volunteers who are conversant in Portuguese or the other languages out there. We get them trained by Rita, maybe on a contractual basis, to get out there and do this and really make better use of the volunteer assets we have by infusing the effort through the paid asset we have here at the Medical Reserve Corps and our public health nurse that we will hire. As you know, Rita's retired. Her last day is next Monday.
Both techs have landscaping activities, and I'm hoping that one of the things that would be useful, since all those kids work on an intern basis for an apprentice basis for a lot of the landscaping firms, it might be a way of distributing
Absolutely.
information. So I hope you reach out to...
Those are critical points. And again, the other big one is there are 13 towns on Cape Cod that have higher than the state's average melanoma rate and skin cancer rate. We need to address that. And what is that? That's getting out there, hitting the public, getting sure at the beaches, and if we can use volunteers to do that, a well-educated issue, and have an incentive to go out and do that because they are volunteers and they want to do something meaningful, that's the way to use them. Because, again, there's 3, maybe 4, the top 4, none of them to me are, cancer from some unknown source. There's skin cancer, there's tick and Lyme, there's buckle up, and there's tobacco.
I just have two quick things. The Orleans sanitarian contract,
Yes.
that's going to continue?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And funding for the test center?
Health centers continue. I have solid funding for at least the next year. I have a contingency fund for a half year after that to close it down, should I have to. But we are getting some renewed interest out there in doing research for leaching technologies that may have some promise of denitrification, but mostly they're disposal means so that people can downsize systems. We have had recent inquiry from a Japanese company, a Connecticut company, and there's 2 other companies that are really pushing to get in there. So we have some ongoing grants in the state. We're working on them with 2 technologies that they're trying to work through the approval process. I anticipate that if everything got cut off right now, they said, no more funding, it would operate for about a year and a half, and that would allow us to close out. I've always had a set aside in the funding structure of that so that the county would have no exposure as far as closing the place down and returning it to its natural state. Somewhere around $150,000 to close that place down, assuming that I could sort of barter some of the assets away, some of the structure on the ground that's reusable, just for digging the hole, take the thing away.
So what would drive closing it down? Would it be the funding, or would it be...
I think what would drive it is, we opened it as the mission was, do D-Night systems work, how well do they work, be the best place that people could come for information, period. That was the goal. We met the goal. And now the technologies that are coming down the line are not coming fast and furious. There's a few coming out of people's heads and engineering boxes that are saying, we can do it. And we want to maintain some ability to always address that. But the way it is now, there are 2 full-time people working out there, supported totally by grants or by structure money coming in. And then we anticipate that its base level would always be 1 person. And there's 21 sites out there. Its base sort of level would be 5 sites out there. And it would be attendant or close to the sewage treatment plant. If Falmouth goes into a regional plant, then we'll be right over there. We'll be beside them. If not displaced by them and then somewhere else. Real flexible. We can move the place in
How
2
many
months.
systems do you have out there?
We have about 15 clients that are out there right now. And we're doing some independent research based on some ideas that people have floated by us saying, there's a passive way to do this. We think it can be done. They've showed me enough data to say, okay, let's give it a try. It's easy enough. We have all the wastewater we need to try these things. So we've been trying some passive means to do it out there. And we have just now gotten 2 more people who want to try passive means out there. And that's key. Passive means that there would be gravity flow, no bells and whistles, modifications to your leach field that would remove nitrogen. There's always been this speculation out there that if you appropriately design something in the ground, it could remove down to 90% removal. Now, theoretically, is it possible? Yeah, theoretically it is. Can it be engineered? I don't want to be the one to say absolutely not. I say I'm from Missouri. Show me.
I might mention that on the Environment and Land Use Committee that I serve on as the National Association of Counties, that what I asked the other county commissioners who serve on that committee as to what measures are they taking to do the type of evaluation. We are unique practically across the whole country in terms of having an active evaluation thing going on. And I know that you've heard from other parts of the country, that it may or may not have, been originated by questions that I was asked.
Oh, absolutely. We get inquiries all the time. I think the one thing that is sort of not getting stated about the IA technologies, because we have focused on those and to serve boards of health, because we've focused so uniquely on that the whole decentralized sort of issue, we get lumped in with that as saying decentralized doesn't work. See, because George says it doesn't work. No, on sites, there's a whole range of decentralized. Everything from there up to the big pipe, there's a gradient that is less explored on the higher end of things. And it is frustrating to me that we often get misquoted and certainly misunderstood in our intent of presenting data. But if you read the data that we send out, it is very precise in its wording, and it is very precise in what you should expect from the technologies that we've explored.
Well, George, if for those decentralized systems that are over 10,000 gallons, and that requires a ground discharge
Water
permit from the
discharge
state,
permit, right.
Does the state monitor these?
Yes, they do.
Oh, they do.
They have
Because
somebody in Southeast region comes down. In fact, I go with him sometimes on the visits because we're interested in what those technologies can bear also.
and what are the nitrogen limits for
You
these?
can get, and this is the part I tell everybody, you can get down to 3, 2, 1.
with the decentralized.
It's just money. The engineering is there. I make an on-site system. We joke we have a recirculating sand filter, which is the lowest grade of technology can be. I can make that get less than 5. It's just a matter of time and money.
Right, so if anybody was going to have these, it would be expensive in the long run. I mean, the thing...
Expensive is a relative term.
Right.
It would cost more than you would if you did not do those enhancements. However, how that pairs up with a large pipe possibility only can be determined by an alternatives analysis that somebody does on site at the town, knowing the layout, how much pipe would have to be laid versus how much they wouldn't have to lay if they use these.
Right.
All of that analysis is not something you can just shoot from the hip.
Right.
you got to do the work.
Well, we're a little off the budget
Yes.
in a way, because I'd love to get
Which is
a
good. The
discussion
Berkeley
going on
is
discharging,
Yes.
discharging under the roads. You know, that's another whole issue. But anybody have any other questions for George related to his
Well,
budget?
there were,
Thank you.
you've already, actually, the explanation was vacant when he was talking about the best information on alternative on-site water systems is,
Yeah.
certainly a budget item. The responding to emergency manner, what were the water quality? Whenever, I used to talk to people who were direct reports of departments. I always had asked them at the end of the year as to what was your most successful program and what was the one that you wanted that could have been, could have made more of a success, and identify what were the things that that you needed that we should have provided you in order to do that. So the first one was, what do you think your most successful program was last year?
Boy, each one has a gem. The beach program, let's face it, beach is our Cape Cod. We kept every beach open to the maximum we could. And when a beach went down, which was a $9,000 a day loss to the town, we got that open within a day. Unheard of in another part of the country. We had the lab open. Water company has, they're going to go to boil water. If we don't open the lab, we open the lab. We did the work. We got it. So there's the lab, the beach program. I could go down every program and say, boy, we had a close one this year and we beat it.
And the MRC.
The MRC
That
was huge.
Yes.
You look at Kendall's program, how much we've done in loans with those two folks up there and been able to meet that need. And I can't point to one of the programs that didn't have something like that. So where we would need the resources is just where I said, the REPC is definitely an entity that's coming into its own and is already into its own. And there are some unanticipated costs, I imagine, as we go forward, as things happen that are going to need to be addressed. But holding that sort of bond of all emergency responders, if anything needs resources in a sort of a separate budget, I'd say, since you asked, that would be it, because I see that as essential. I don't ever want to go back to the point where a health agent, I can turn to a health agent and say, by the way, who's your police chief? And that person not to be able to say, oh, Chief X, he does this. Oh, his kids go to college here. And we met last week because we had to go over our plans for our clinic. And I never want to go back, because that support structure for emergency response and public health emergencies, as well as any other emergencies,
Well,
we never had it.
When you think about it, many of the major issues of the day are all wrapped up in your department and right under your purview, so to speak, when you talk about the health issues, the wastewater, the water quality, all of that.
Right.
And so go for it.
So, yes, good job.
Health lab equipment, I didn't see anything in here for you.
No, we didn't go for any expansion of equipment. We realized the budget was tight. The only thing we did ask for was an increase in our supply line item, because we usually run real tight on the end of the year. I've asked OMIN to carefully look at all our service contracts and say, because really, if we had anything, we'd be beefing those up, because when we go down with an instrument, it goes out the door and that's revenues lost. But we carefully looked at the age of our instruments, the expertise to repair them in-house. We got hit with a pretty big repair bill this year on one of our mass specs, but it still would not have equaled what the policy would have been. But the only thing that does, when we do have a coverage, is that it gets somebody down immediately. That's the contract. Whereas, we had a repair, but we had to drag the guy down here. And, that's a little tight. But I think when we go into the new laboratory, we ought to reconsider some of those things, because then the revenue stream and making sure we maintain it will be even higher importance.
Now, that $1.8 million that you're considering for bonding, does that include furniture and fixtures?
Now, let me clarify. The $1 million we already have set aside. We have that in cash. It's in one of our reserve accounts. We have it
Oh,
set
it's
aside.
not, it's not $1.8 million in bonding, it's 800,000. But does that $1.8 million include furnitures and fixtures?
We actually went down and had all of the present counters, everything. We had a guy design it based on that. So he told us how much more we would need, and that's included in that estimate. But we're using every piece of all the counters down there. They're all moving over, and you can see where each piece goes in the new laboratory.
And then the equipment you have, you would
The
move over.
equipment would be moved over. And another answer to your question on equipment, there's only one other piece of equipment that we had considered. The price is so outrageous that we're going to try to get some grant money for it. And that's the pharmaceuticals, personal care products. It's going to be a huge issue.
Right.
So to address it, last year we purchased using the test center funds actually, because it ancillary to the test center, and we could use it for those analyses also, a total organic carbon instrument, which will give us some initial data. And I've asked Goldman to, on our dime, do some research into nitrate total organic carbon ratio so that we could present that information to get a grant, to get an instrument, a waters instrument. Those are somewhere around $253,000, $4,000. So we thought that would probably be a little unreasonable request for this year.
Let me just jump in, though, to get back to your kind of question, which is, what do you get for your $1.8 million, and how broad is it? I would say we should go back and look at that because we really have pared it down in an effort. Two things, obviously, to save money and get under the budget, and B, to squeak under the DCAM waiver. And so the question is, I'm not sure how much we got in terms of finishing the loft area.
I think it was fairly minimal.
Yeah.
It was bringing all the facilities up there, that plumbing and electrical, and allowing for that, and the cabling. But as far as really,
finishing it
putting
up.
The floor on and getting some.
So we should look at that.
You should do it fully if you're going to have to.
If we're going to have to deal with the DCAM thing, right? That's how
That was a
And that will then eliminate the trailers and that sort of thing and get everybody moved over.
20,000 will be back in.
It'll free up space down here, not
It'll
only
be
for
happy
us,
here on
but
the
for the court
courts.
system.
Right, okay, good.
Are we,
I just had
we have
one
another
question.
one.
You have a mass spectrometer, right?
We have 2 GCs and a GC mass spec, yes.
Okay. There's always the use of that type of a device to do some of the analysis. When you mentioned the analysis of chemical composition, that you could do some of that by using the mass spectrometer.
Oh, we do.
Yeah.
That's what we use the mass specs for now.
Right.
We use the mass specs for all of the VOC analysis.
Yeah.
And we have an ICP-MS, which we do all the metals analysis for the towns, for their landfill closing and monitoring. So yeah, all our instruments are, everyone's cranking there.
Well, no, but when you
Has a full dance
mentioned getting an additional piece of equipment for analyzing personal care products, you could use the mass spectrometer as an interim device in order to discover what the internal composition.
I'm sorry, I misinterpreted the question. The answer to that is no, you can't. Because that particular mass spec would have to go on the tail end of 2 other instruments. You need 2 mass specs for that analysis too, plus an ICP, plus an OES. So those 4 instruments line up.
It was the initial stand for, so that they get that.
Ion coupled plasma is one of the things you need, and then you need 2 mass specs following. So, yeah, the instrumentation you would need for that. We're actually looking at a new instrument. It's made by the Waters Company, and it's supposed to be able to do the pharmaceuticals in a single run. And we're looking into it, but we really need to develop the need for it here to make sure that, what will the information that we get from that down here really tell us? So we're looking at the towns of Wellfleet and Eastham to analyze their wells that have higher nitrates concurrently for total organic carbon, which is a surrogate measure of those pharmaceuticals to some people's understanding, So we're going to run those analyses and say, this is what we're going to need. We see the total organic carbon in there. We really need to know what it is. And whether it is personal care products, pharmaceuticals, or endocrine disruptors. And that will develop the need. So we use that information to parlay toward a grant.
And then the states raised their standards on TOCs.
Yeah, they
recently.
lowered
Or lowered
the requirement for
requirement,
discharge to groundwater. And there's not much work that's been done on Cape Cod in that total organic carbon piece. We got it, as I said, from the base instrument because that instrument, Shimadzu instrument, actually does total nitrogen in one pass, which is what we were really after. It just happens to do the TOC with it. So that's why I justified getting it through the base, because we want to know total nitrogens all the time out there.
Is it always the case that if the total organic compounds are at a certain point in
Did
terms
you have
of...
pharmaceuticals?
Yeah, no, that you would have to go to reverse osmosis? I mean, that's something that
No.
gets talked about in terms of discharge?
No, the issue is, what are you drinking with the carbon? If you are drinking something innocuous, cellulose, sugar's got a lot of carbon. So if you're just drinking sugar, no problem. But if they looked at the carbon, the organic carbon there, and they discovered that it was, estradiol or something, then you'd say, wow, that's an endocrine disruptor. You don't want to be drinking that at a certain concentration. Well, those analyses that we're talking about, just to give you an example, last time I had a run, it was $800 a sample. They're now about $1,200 a sample through the best USGS lab in Colorado. They're about $800. So you can't analyze that many for samples. So they took a surrogate measure. What is in every one of those compounds that could hurt you that we can measure easily and quickly? Just like they do with coliform. I mean, fecal coliform, E. coli, most E. coli don't hurt you. You have them in your body. But we use them for an indicator because to measure for salmonella, all the viruses, all the other, you couldn't do it. So you say if E. coli is there, then the bugs are there. It's the same with total organic carbon. If it's at a certain level, then we think this other stuff could be there. We don't know whether that's it. So that's why they use it.
Okay, then we're going to stop. All right.
The other piece is that the total amount of particulate matter that's in there also attacks the infrastructure of even delivering this.
It's true.
So that you could drink it, but you can't run your closed system air
Right, it would start eating it up.
Yeah, right.
Thank you very much.
So thank you.
George, thank you. Have a good year.
So we're still